Here we go. Okay, it's not
Close
showing
down
live yet,
Chrome, just
just in case.
just so I'm got the least amount running.
That's probably a good thing. Okay, it says I'm live, but it's not showing live on here. So let me double check on my page. Well, that's odd. There it is. Okay, good. Okay, it is going. Actually, it was showing like a green display. All right, so
We're live on the Facebook.
we are live on the Facebook. Yes, darling, we are. Okay, and I'm gonna get us recorded. So here we go. Record to the cloud. Okay. All right, well, here we go. Well, welcome everybody. I am so excited to be back with the one, the only, Abraham Shreve. Woo!
I'm excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have you. I cannot believe you have not been on the show before, and I'm so honored to have my first episode since stepping out of a 17-year team leader career. And I've been traveling the country, 9 cities, 9 states, finding my next thing. And then I came back to this and I'm like, who is that person that I want to have in my studio here with our listeners? And it's you, darling. So welcome and thanks for being on the show.
I'm very honored. That must be an incredible adventure for you.
For real.
Something you've done at the highest level for 17 years, and now you're building the second half, you said.
Exactly. And I'm so excited. And this is like perfect that you're here in the guest today because I've watched you build and you've impacted so many people's lives that I care about so much. And you and I have been friends for years, but to see what you've done with maps and going out into the rest of the world with it, like it's impressive. So I want to take this lots of different ways.
Let's do it.
And we could even sing a song at the end if we want.
I am so in.
I know you've got all the guitars behind.
In the office over there.
How many?
5. I only have 5 with
Only
me.
5. Okay, well, I've got one over there. You can't see it, but your guitar playing is way better than mine. Well, let me just read your bio real quick. So those of you watching and those listeners later, they won't see this, but I have your bio, and I just want to say a little bit about who you are, and then just go into a great conversation because the goal is the listeners will walk away empowered that really anything's possible, and that's really what the second half is all about. Because you win or lose the game in the second half, right? And how many championships you watch, right? And then the other team comes back. So it's like leaning in. This is time to lean in on life, right? And never giving up.
Well, you talk a lot more about life in the second half, I find. In the first half, you're so focused on how do I make it? In the second half, you're focused on how do I impact?
So good. Exactly. And that's what we want to do is impact. So here's your bio. So Abe is the CEO and founder of the Millionaire Business Network. Abe has personally completed over 12,500 one-on-one coaching sessions, oh my goodness, with innovative business leaders across many different industries. Abe is the founder of the Choose Difficult podcast, so check it out. Abe is passionate about developing training and tools that allow others to achieve more than they thought possible. Abe is an accomplished speaker who has traveled the country, teaching thousands of business leaders how to more effectively build their businesses and lead their people. Abe has been married to the love of his life, Teresa, for 28 years. Congratulations. Their greatest joy in life is being the parents of Maddie, Ethan, Gavin, and is it Aaliyah?
Aaliyah, yeah.
Aaliyah, so awesome. As a family of 6, they adore their 2 golden doodles. I love that, Ellie and Indy. Abe has traveled the country in a camper van that he and his family converted from a blank cargo van, and they named it the Family Vantion.
The family Vantion. Yep, we stayed in a Walmart parking lot near you.
I love that. It's so fun.
We've been to 28 states in that.
Oh my gosh, 28 states. That's incredible. Oh my gosh, Abe's dedicated. He's a dedicated rock climber. I did not know that. Skier, mountain biker, fly fisherman, and maker of all things wood and metal. And an avid guitarist, as you can see if you're watching live, of the 5 guitars behind him. Abe's mission in life is dedicated to bringing out the very best in others. And that's what you do. That's what I see you do. That's what I've seen you do for over a decade. And just, I'm excited to let's talk about that today. Let's talk about your journey.
All right.
So where are you
Yeah.
from? Tell us about yourself.
I live in Ogden, Utah. I was born here. We're a little mountain town, right on the nestled right into the Wasatch Mountain. And my home where I live is a block and a half from a really great trailhead. And so we spend a lot of time, and I was raised in the mountains. I started skiing when I was 5 years old, and I started climbing rocks when I was 21. And I'm a little obsessive in the things that I love, and so I've really leaned into adventure, especially outdoor adventure. So you mentioned rock climbing. I've I've really pursued, for over 30 years now, I pursued the biggest walls I could find. And um, ever been to Yosemite, California?
Yes, I grew up near there. Uh-huh.
Well, I've climbed El Cap a whole bunch of times, and
Wow.
the Northwest Face on Half Dome, and a whole bunch of other things. And and so I've learned a lot about life and about business in the pursuit of high performance in the outdoor arena. So that speaks a lot to who I am. And you mentioned, in my bio that my greatest joy, I would tell you that my greatest joys are being Teresa's husband and being their father, being the father of the Shrivelets. And so I think kids are going to learn what they're capable of, or they're also going to learn what they think their limitations should be by watching how we push ourselves or what limits we put on ourselves. And so since you mentioned the van, it's important. It's always been important for me for the kids to be able to look over and see me doing my thing and to
Mm.
correlate. We get to do these cool adventures because dad's over there doing that. And so in those trips, in those van trips, they were 2 summers, one up the East Coast, one on the West Coast. And during those trips, 3 days a week, they would see me in a park somewhere with noise canceling headset, my laptop. I would tether off my phone, and I was doing my coaching calls.
Wow.
And that really happened. They were able to say, we're able to do all these adventures because dad's over there doing that.
That is so
Now they're
cool.
getting older, and they're all looking at how they want to build their lives, and little lessons are starting to come out, which is really good.
Isn't that great? And then you've role modeled this behavior that you can be out with your family and building this amazing career all at the same time. But I want to go back to this like adventurous spirit that you have, because I think that's a lot. And I love that with the whole playing to win theme that I live, right? And so when did that start for you, this whole outdoor challenge? When did that start for you?
Oh, I have a mother. I have amazing parents, and I have a mother she was probably raised by wolves and then eventually came to society. Growing up, she would drag the mattress out onto the front porch so that she could sleep and see the stars. And I'd come home with my friends, and they're like, there's someone homeless on your porch. I'm like, it's my mother. And they all knew. They all knew and
Yeah.
loved my mom. My dad, for my dad, he's a Southern gentleman, comes from a little town in North Carolina, spent over 40 years as a well-known doctor in our area. And he, like, roughing it for dad is Motel 6. That's hard for dad. And so for me, my mother shared with me this love of the outdoors. She had me on skis when I was 5 years old. And every chance we got to sleep outside, to be outside, pardon me, to be in a river, to hike straight up a hill in snow. I mean, she was always the one that would drag. In fact, this is kind of a funny story. We wanted to have a haunted house at our home, and we did for many years. And I have these memories of my mother taking us to the park and us filling trash bags of leaves that we would then go home into the basement. I would never do this now.
Oh my
And
gosh.
dump those leaves on the carpet for the graveyard part of the haunted house. But I grew up with a mom that just believed we are collecting experiences. And to me, that's what the outdoors really is. And by the way, she was the first rock climber in the family. I have a picture of
Wow.
her sometime in the 60s climbing the Army training rock in Colorado Springs. And, years
It's
later,
amazing.
I would, I would find rock climbing, and everyone, most of the people around me said, why would you do that? That's crazy, which I actually love that response. If someone isn't saying to me, why would you ever do that? I feel like I'm not working on the right objectives.
Yeah.
But my mom was the one that said, honey, if you're feeling the call of the wild, you got to run. You know, even though it's scary for her because El Cap is 3,300 feet, you know,
Wow.
but she got it. She understood. She was the one
That's
that said,
what an
do it.
amazing role model. So how old were you when you started rock climbing then?
I was 21.
Okay, so as an adult, right? And then
Yeah, in
yeah,
high
when
school.
did you in so in high school you started a little bit dabbling or
No, I was a soccer player in high school and I graduated and then I ended up spending 2 years. I served a mission for my church, went to all the way to northern Florida. And then when I came home, this group of friends that I left had all turned into rock climbers. And so they took me climbing in Utah in December. I remember we're like pushing snow out of the holes and our hands would freeze so bad we couldn't feel them, but I was hooked
wow.
and none of them were hooked. So I started to pursue this and they all stopped. But it got me, and I've traveled all over the world climbing in all
Wow.
kinds of crazy places.
So it became just this like hobby or you had this adventurous spirit like your mom, right? And then you took that. So okay, so you did a mission work for you said 2 years after high school? It was two
Yeah,
years. And then
yeah.
what did you do? What did you do after that?
So I had a leadership scholarship to go to Utah State,
Oh wow.
and and that was important because when I was growing up, I heard my mother. Now remember, I am who I am because I have wonderful parents. But I heard my mom say sometime early in my life, Shreves aren't good at math. And at the time, I thought, huh, all right. I know we're good at lots of things. I now know math isn't one of those. And I just took that in. And I didn't really see it as a limitation. I focus on lots of other things. And it would hurt her feelings to hear me say that now, even though I would explain to her that I am who I am because she was my mother. But
Yeah.
even when I got to college, after 2 years of college, I went to register and they said, you actually can't register. You have to pick a major. And I went in and said, what do you have that doesn't have a lot of math? And they gave me three options and I chose one and I was climbing within an hour somewhere up Logan Canyon. And so, I knew I couldn't get an academic scholarship, so it had to be a leadership scholarship, and I was able to get one of those, and that took me to Utah State.
And
And
so what
that's
did you
where I
want to,
met
yeah,
the
what did,
love of my life.
and that's where you met your love of your life. That's amazing. Well, you picked the right place. Well, what was it though when you chose that and made that decision? Because honestly, I didn't even know leadership was an option. I would have taken it, right? I was an English major at UCLA because I was like, well, you can do anything with that. You can write, you can do all the things. How did you, like, what made you pick leadership? Because it's interesting that you've gone on then to lead people in life.
Well, Melanie, no one's ever asked me that question. My degree was not leadership.
Okay.
I was a part of what's called the President's Ambassadors, and we were a group of people that had achieved some kind of leadership accolade in high school and had been active in our high schools and things like that. And uh, it's kind of a cool story because mm, we're going to get deep right off the bat. You ready?
I'm ready. That's what I'm going for, darling.
So I knew growing up that I could always have whatever I wanted if I was willing to work. My dad had a great career. I look like my dad. So even to this day, I'll have people around here say, "Are you Clyde Shreve's son?" And
Wow.
they'll tell me stories. I grew up with people bringing food by the house. And I remember one time there was a gentleman that was roofing the house. And I said, Dad, what's going on? He said, well, he needed surgery and he couldn't pay for it. And he offered this. So we're going to do that. Yeah, my dad is as
Wow.
good a soul as there is. Well, when I was a junior in high school, he had a financial manager that embezzled and sunk us.
Mm.
I went from that position of, I know I can have everything I want if I'm willing to work. My parents always made us work. So we developed a great work ethic, but now we don't have that. And I got to watch my heroes in life process this in a way that would really help me out later. And so this guy, I feel like there is his reward will come sometime after this life, I think.
Yes, for
Um,
sure.
but I was very, very angry. He did some really terrible things,
Oh man.
and my parents trusted him. They maybe didn't inspect it as much as they should have. But I remember one day my dad came down. I was a senior, and he said to me, "Son, I dropped the lawsuit and I just wanted you to know. And I was so mad. Like, what do you mean? And he said, it's taking my life. It's filling me with anger. It's filling me with hatred, and it's robbing me of joy. And I let it go. And I didn't get it in that moment, like a high school senior wouldn't. And I said, this isn't just you, Dad, but it did not take long before I started to think through. I'm going to get emotional.
Mm.
I haven't thought of this story in so long. I started to think through what he had actually done. He had chosen the life that he wanted over this, pursuing this man. And it meant starting over at the end of his career. And, he did that. He let it go. And he said it was killing me. And so now I have a decision that I have to make, because we have just enough money for me to go to college or for me to go serve a mission for my church. And I wanted to go on the mission, and I chose that. And so I had applied for this leadership scholarship, and I was in student government in high school, and I didn't get it. I was denied. I got a 1-year tuition waiver. And so the guy came down to give away the scholarships, and as he was giving them away, he gave away all the little ones first, like mine, but didn't call my name. So I'm standing up there. And then he gave away all the athletic scholarships, and then the academics, and I'm like, this is so humiliating. He forgot me. And then he said, Abe doesn't know this, but we have a scholarship at Utah State called the President's Leadership Council. And he started to describe this scholarship. And he said, Abe doesn't know this, but we're awarding him the PLC scholarship. And I look at my mom, and she's just sobbing, right? And he and I became very close in the 4 years that I was under his tutelage at Utah State. And I asked him once, when did that open up? When did that position open up? And he said, there was no position that opened up. And I said, well, when did you decide I would get the scholarship? You guys denied me. He said, I had a strong impression in the car on the way to that assembly. And I owe a lot. His name is Mark Tenhovey, and I owe a lot to that man and those that I got to learn leadership with. And so I was at Utah State, and I was, I had to pay for school, and I did have a scholarship, was extremely helpful. But I also had this mission to convince any girl that would listen to me that I wasn't 16 years old.
Did you look 16? Were you like a younger looking guy?
I did. I looked 16.
Oh, bless your heart.
But I had a great group of friends, and we did a lot of fun things. We would travel like crazy, just trying to find all the rocks to climb that we could. And Teresa, when I met Teresa, I kind of knew right away that she could tear my heart out of my beating chest and throw it on the freeway. I knew I could just fall for her. And I'd had my heart broken. We all have, right?
Yeah.
So I was quite guarded, and for good reason. And so we dated for what in Utah is quite a while. And then, things started to develop, and, without taking into the weeds on that whole story, I can tell you that, she is the single greatest thing that's ever happened in my life.
That's so beautiful. And okay, so I want to backtrack a minute, okay, if I may. And how beautiful, like that, everything you just shared right now is so beautiful and powerful, and all those things I didn't know about you. And that's exactly why I'm so happy you're here with me today. First of all, let's go back a little bit with your dad and the stand that he took. Instead of doing what's right or proving or getting, making, whatever, getting even at him and justice, he chose happiness. He chose his life. He said, I lost my life. And for you as a young man to see that in action, I mean, what a life lesson that was.
It really had an impact when I would come back for advice. And he would say things like, life is anything but fair, and business is anything but easy, right? Anyone that is an entrepreneur is in the business of solving problems, which means there is an overstock of problems to solve.
There's never a shortage, right?
There's never a shortage. A mentor once said to me, your ability to solve problems is your ability to make money. That's right. So when I would come to my dad and say, God, this is so frustrating, when he would talk to me and give me advice as someone that owned and ran his own medical clinic, there was always this undertone of and Gary says this all the time, I heard this from my dad, and now I hear it from Gary, and it takes a different level with me. I don't know if Gary even knows that, but he would say, you have to choose happy. You have to choose happiness. And that's not easy. And then he would share his story and he would say, I had everything lined up and I had all the attorneys in a row and they all thought we win this thing. And for me to choose happy, I had to let it go. And, so if I come to him with something that's hard, I'm like, oh, this is rough and I'm upset and this person did that. When he says, are you choosing happy? It means more to me than if somebody else said it. If somebody else said it, I'd be like, oh, that's easy to say, right? You're not in the situation I'm in. I just watched him do that. And I've seen how that affected the next 20 years of his life and in the man that he is today. And so
And you got to see him rebuild that, Abe, right? You got to see him basically have everything that he and your mom had built together, right? Financially, get taken away unrightfully, right? Not from some like, random, whatever in real estate they lost or whatever, just from just a breach of trust with somebody they really trusted, right? And then go back and rebuild that. And that must have been also watching him like take that stand for choose happiness. That must have just really impacted you. And it's so funny because I know Gary Keller has been such a huge mentor to you. Like you and
yes.
him are very tight. I'm very well, and he's trusted you to take maps out into the world. And so I wonder what your take is on the, happiness is a choice is the first bold truth that he wrote. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, I think that when we first say that or people first hear that, it sounds nice, doesn't it? Happiness is a choice. And I think if everything's going well, most would say, yes, it is. But that is
That's
not when that decision matters.
right.
That decision matters when we are on our knees, when we've been knocked down, when we are struggling. And to me, happiness as a choice means that, that it's something that we strive to seek and to do at times that we have every socially acceptable reason to not be happy or to be rough around. When Gary first said that to me, and to many of us, when he first started saying this, he's probably said it many times before, but the first time I heard it, and these lawsuits were coming up. He was going through it
Yeah.
in a way that I don't know that I could handle that. You'd have to lock me away. And he gave some really good advice around it. He said, everything in time will work out. And he said, so you have to have perspective to choose happy. You have to have perspective. And I think that comes from many years of doing battle in business and asking yourself the question, how could I choose happiness here?
Yeah.
I've seen him, what Gary does that amazes me and something that I'm striving to learn from him is I don't know another person on earth that is as good at compartmentalizing something as Gary. And it comes because of the life that he has for Mary, his wife, and his family. And he's just been through so many battles that he will check out the door the business. And it's huge. It's the Department of Defense or Justice, and it's these lawsuits, and it's others that are trying to take him down. And he just knows that he knows he's a gamer, but when he says you got to compartmentalize it, he'll leave it at work. And I've seen him do it. I've gone with him. I've been really fortunate at times to be able to go with him and see him in his home. And he does that. He leaves it. He kisses his wife. They do things together. And that counsel that there is always something you can do. And that over time, everything's going to work out. Yeah. I mean, Melanie, I bet if I explored your story, we would find some really difficult and challenging times. Fair?
For sure. Oh,
Me
yes.
too.
Yeah.
And yet there seems to be 100% survival rate for both of us so far.
So far, so good. Yeah,
Yeah, so
absolutely.
we may as well lean into that wisdom and learn the skill of being able to compartmentalize, adding perspective, and making a choice that though it isn't easy,
Yeah.
it's profoundly helpful.
Profoundly. And I love that. So I love, and I wanted to bring that up because I know how close you and Gary are. And I know that he just rewrote Onward Bold, right? Which is amazing content. But that first one being happiness is a choice, I think that people really can blow that one off easily. Like, happiness is a choice. Like they belittle the profound meaning of that. And, just for example, my listeners may or may not know this, but I left a 25-year marriage a year ago, 3 years ago, but got finalized a year ago. And that I should have left 10 years ago. And I've been really open about it with everyone. And I say to everybody, but happiness is a choice, and I'm choosing me, and I'm choosing my happiness to live in alignment with who I really believe that I am. And so many people say, I can't even imagine that you didn't have a great marriage because the way you showed up, always so joyful. But it's a choice. It's a choice. And so that happiness is a choice. We're talking to the people struggling right now.
Yeah.
Right? Where life's really throwing stuff at them. It is a choice. And part of that is a lot of another one that he says is, everything's an inside out job, right? You think it, then it becomes. And so that self work with yourself, that just aligns right with that. So that story of your father, and when he told you the answer was choose happy, like that, what an amazing moment for you to
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, it's played an impact, and I'm debating with myself if I want to share what
Come on.
came to mind, and the fact that I've said that aloud now means I probably will.
Now you have to, darling, because see, this is a
Yeah.
safe space. I have great listeners.
I'm really my heart goes out to you and what you've been through. That's super hard. And you are certainly the picture of resilience. But I've learned in my coaching, in both being coached and as a coach, that behind the curtain, everyone struggles with something.
Everyone.
And this has been a year for me to learn a lot of those lessons on a real deep personal level. And here's what I'll say. I think in order for us to choose happy, what we're really doing is we're saying we're going to lean into our relationships that we have.
Yeah.
We're going to start doing the stuff. Every one of us, we know the things that would help us. It doesn't mean, knowing them doesn't mean we're doing them. And in moments of real challenge, we start to do them. We either start to do the things that we know would help us, or we abandon hope. And I would say to someone, please take the first step towards what you know. And then I heard a really great definition of empathy one time from a mentor of mine named Dr. Matt Townsend, who's just a brilliant.
He's amazing. Dr. Matt. Oh, he's incredible. Yes.
And he said, true empathy is standing with another person in their darkest hour for as long as they need you with nothing to say. And I've learned that when life gets really hard, it's funny, you talk about playing to win. When life gets really difficult, we really are the act of serving another person away from feeling different.
100%.
And I've it's something I've learned this year.
Mm.
But the hard thing is if you're having a struggle, the hard thing is opening up about it, talking about it. Okay, so let me give you a little background.
Okay.
You're gonna see me squirm because it's profoundly uncomfortable. I feel like it's really important.
Yeah, somebody needs to hear it.
Yeah, so my best friend took his life almost 3 years ago. Single hardest thing I've faced to date.
I'm so sorry.
And in February of this year, another good friend, my kid's orthodontist, my fishing buddy, we go to church together. We know his wife and his 4 kids. He took his life. And I found myself into what I can only describe as I'd never experienced anything like this before, but it was this crushing depression. Yeah. And even with all that I know, Melanie, the interesting thing about coaching is that when the table turns and you go from being the coach to being the coachee, it doesn't matter what you know. It doesn't matter the coaching models or the leadership understanding you have. What matters is all the same insecurities roll right out.
That's right.
So I really struggled with this. It would just come in waves. I didn't even know how to talk about it.
Mm.
I have a good friend. You have a good friend who asked me, this Ken Pozek. We were in Colorado
Yeah.
together, and he asked me, "How does that manifest?" So I
Mm.
shared it with him, and I said, "It comes as a combination of profound loneliness and hopelessness." And here's the crazy thing: I'm very close to my wife, and I'm really close to my kids, and I have dear friends. And all this time, I get to work with Gary, and we're
Yeah.
growing as a company, and I work with great people. So, I had one night in particular, it was in the middle of July, and I'd been out fly fishing and decided oh man, you got me into this story. Decided that, I love to do that. And I was on a river that I go to quite frequently, and I know all the fish by name. We know each other, and I can get them, and I put them back.
Oh,
We have a great relationship.
catch and release kind of thing.
Miserable. And
Mm.
my boys were off with friends. My daughter's off with her husband, my oldest daughter. And we just adore that son-in-law of ours. And Teresa was music directing Anastasia, and Aaliyah was playing the role of little Anastasia. So they were at an all-day rehearsal. And I went home and I was ruminating. In fact, I wrote a song about it. Melanie, I'll share it with you if you want, but I wrote a song about what I was feeling. And the first verse is, they see a man on a white horse holding up the world, the picture of greatness. They don't know that he thinks about going home. They think he's fearless.
Mm.
And in writing, Teresa said to me, "Man, you really went deep into that song." And there's a book called Bad Therapy, which I'd recommend to anyone. But the author makes the contention that the therapeutic solutions that are being offered today, so many of them are really bad because what we're doing is we're ruminating on the problems.
Mm.
And that's what I was doing. I was ruminating on this feeling when it would come, and what we focused on expands.
Yeah.
And I would have the coach on my shoulder saying, "You know what to do to help." And at the time I was still traveling and speak. I still am, but I would travel and speak, and no one knew. I promise everyone listening right now, someone in your life is struggling with this.
Mm.
And I went home from fishing, and I just sat on the couch, and those two golden doodles, everyone should be greeted by Indy and Ellie at some point in their life. And they were so excited to see me, but then they need a 5-hour nap. This is how it works in my house. And I was
Oh.
sitting on the couch. I'm like, okay, I'd been to Tony Robbins. I got to change physiology. I grabbed a backpack, threw a jacket in it. I threw some protein bars, a headlight, some water, and took off to the mountains. And I turned off my location sharing, and I can't even explain to you why I did that.
Mm.
I went up into the mountain. I started about 6 o'clock, and it was a rough time for me. I turned off my phone, and I just thought a lot. And just my thinking was, when I feel like I've got a hold of this, I will come down. Now, those that know me or follow my life would say he's partners with Gary Keller. He's got everything going right. And there was so much going right. Just didn't see this coming. And so I ended up calling a friend of mine from the top. I texted him at about 1 in the morning and just said, "I'm on the mountain. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this." And he talked me down. I went home. Teresa was worried, as you may imagine. I had let her know that I was
Yeah.
okay-ish. But the next day, I sat my whole family down because it occurred to me that my two friends never talked about it. And I sat my whole family down and said, "Hey, here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I'm experiencing." And as a dad, you want to be bulletproof.
Yeah.
As a husband, I want to carry the cross, in my
Mhm.
in my way.
Yeah.
The truth is, I just needed them. Even my
Yeah.
12-year-old Aaliyah. And I let them know where I was at. And you don't even know how to ask for help, Melanie.
Yeah.
Teresa said, "What do you need?" I didn't even know what to say. I had this conflicting conversation in my head where I just want her not to worry. I'm like, I'm going to make it. I'll figure it out." And the other side just saying, "Please check on me. Just check on me." And so there was a moment, I don't know, to my knowledge, I wasn't broadcasting these things at the time, but Gary reached out one day and just said, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "I'm doing fine." I swear he's got some kind of witchcraft.
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, no, really, how are you?" And sent a text, right? I'm like, "Oh, I'm doing good. I'm working on this," kind of gave him some business stuff. And he said, "Abe, that's all great. And it's very general. How are you really doing? Spill it." Said the word spill it. And I did. I said, "Spill it." Okay. And longest text he's ever received. He'll never ask me to do that again. And he said
Oh
he
man.
arranged a call and got on the phone with me and asked me all about it. I'm so sorry. And then he went into happiness as a choice and, gave me some insight. He's checked a few times. I can tell you that there's some things during all of this. I'm doing much better now, you should know. But there's some things that have been profoundly helpful to me in my journey. One of them is Matt Townsend put me on a book called Unwinding Anxiety. And the author is a researcher from Brown, and it's their contention that we create an anxiety loop. And they teach mindfulness, which I would have told you was akin to like astrology earlier on. But now I understand sitting, when
Oh
that
my
feeling
goodness.
washes in, sitting with it and just
Yes.
observing it and not taking it
Yes.
in. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
great at this, but I'm getting good enough that I'm learning how to work with this. And then and then if I've done any one thing right, it was I told my family and my friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I would say to anyone who may be experiencing this, you can be two things at once. You can be chasing high performance and you can be struggling deeply personally and feel like you can't share that. You can. Kids won't lose respect. Wife will only want to help, and so
If that, I'm so glad, Abe, that you brought this up. Thank you for sharing that, first of all. Thank
well,
you for sharing that.
you took me here.
Well, this is where we needed to go today because I have so many people that are so special to me that struggle with depression, and so many, in fact, without outing, but just people I really love that battle with this, and they're men. And I just I hope that we create a world where it's a safe place where they do know, there's a safe place, because I would imagine now you having that dialogue with Teresa and the kids, you're closer because of it. You were already close and had amazing, but because you show that vulnerability, because you show, man, that I don't even know how to fix myself, but this is where I'm at. You're actually showing up as your true, authentic self to them.
Yeah.
And that's the best way that they can love you and just be in it with you.
When you show up, I think the way I showed up was I had nothing left.
Mm.
So I was so wiped out. And um, do Charlotte Savoy,
Yeah, of course.
one of my closest friends, and
Yeah, she's great.
shared with Charlotte, along the way. And having people that will just say, "Hey, how are you? I'm checking,"
Mm.
does a lot.
Oh, goes so far.
I learned, it was interesting. My journey, I feel like I've been really, really fortunate because there are those, like I am not qualified to talk about clinical depression, or I don't think that's what I was dealing with or what I've been dealing with. I've learned some techniques, and those things have been really, really helpful. But man, what's helped me more than anything is to talk about it.
Hmm.
And when my friend Gino took his life, I started calling friends because it I didn't know,
Mm.
didn't say anything,
Yeah.
and we knew each other very, very well. And so I started calling friends and saying, "Hey, if you're struggling, I want to be the call." And he said, and there's a dear friend of mine, I won't mention his name, but he said if I lined up my 10 top performing friends that would never think about anything like this, he'd be at the top of the list. And he said, "I've thought about it every day for 6 months," and told me what he was going through. I could have never guessed, but I would call him every other day, send him messages. "Hey man, I love you. I'm thinking about you. You're important to me."
Mm.
And you know, we wouldn't really talk to one another this way then, but he told me after about 6 months of that, he said, "You have saved my life. Checking on me has saved my life." And so, I really feel like there's what we do, and then there's who we do that with. And,
Mhm.
you know, I've learned the value of just being a little open. And it's not comfortable for me, Melanie. It's really uncomfortable for me. But I feel so strongly that if I have a little platform, I want to put this out there so that people can understand that we all go through this and there's things we can do.
Yeah.
And if you're experiencing this, you are not alone. I was in North Carolina and I shared some of this. And I was speaking at their regional event. And they kept saying, you got to meet this amazing person. I'm not going to say her name because I don't have permission to do this, even though I
Okay.
know she'd be fine with it.
Sure.
But I got to talk to her and she said, my husband didn't make it out back out of the mountain.
Mm.
And she told me her story and she's phenomenal. She's an
Yeah.
amazing mother, building
Mhm.
an incredible business. I mean, completely inspired by her. You know, there's some conversations for us to have.
Yeah.
So if you look at my journey and you say, well, how does that affect you now? You know, how has that impacted the way that I show up? I can tell you that I have made some real changes in my life. One of those is I don't want a business built alone. Gary is a great mentor to so many of us, but he's not here in Ogden. He doesn't come join me in my office. I
Right.
found a really great partner that we show up and we work together every day.
It's awesome.
Um, I I find that I ask people a lot more. Just people I meet when I'm sitting on an airplane, I'll just put out my hand and say, hey, I'm Abe. And you'll know in the first second if they're into it. Oh, I'm so and so. Or
Yeah.
hey, you know, you can tell if they don't want anything to do with it. 9 out of 10 times they want to talk. And you know, Stephen Covey taught us this principle: before you can influence another, you must first be influenced by them. It's probably the core value of any great coach or leader, parent,
Yeah.
spouse. And so I'll start asking questions. And in no time, people take us to the places they need to go. And I could, like, can I share one of those experiences here?
Please do.
So I was on a plane. Oh, man, I've flown so much recently. I was on a plane to, where was I going? Oh, I was going to Austin.
Mm.
I was going to Austin and I sat next to this lady and nope. I'm sorry. I was flying back from Oregon to Utah. So I'd left Portland. I was on my way back. Sat next to this lady. And I was in the emergency aisle where you get a little extra leg room. And how many times have you gotten that, right?
Right.
And for some reason, when they said to me, when the lady said, hey, do you accept the responsibility? For the first time ever, it hit me that, man, if something goes wrong, I got responsibility. And I said yes, but then I pulled out the card. And for the first time ever, I started reading the card, like, what would I need to
Studying
do?
it.
Yeah. And the girl next to me said, the lady, she said, oh, it's easy. You just pull that, switch that over, press that button. It'll depressurize the cabin. And she gave me all the stuff. And I'm like, you sound like you've done this before. And she said, I'm a flight nurse.
Oh, wow.
I call that the opening of the door because I have
Okay.
1,000 questions now.
Yes.
And we just talked and talked and talked. And she said when she was young, she always wanted to fly and she wanted to be a nurse. And she found a way that she could put those together. And she told me stories of the people she met when she showed up on a helicopter. And it was her job to be the trauma doctor, to be
Mm.
the emergency medicine nurse, to be all these things in that moment, to be calm. And I could sense in her a heaviness. And I'm not very cosmic. There are people that are far more in tune with these kind of things than me. I could just feel
Yeah.
that in a person that has given so much of her life to other people, there was something. So when we got off the plane, her name's Amber. I said, Amber, I probably shouldn't say her name. Let's call her Amber. I said, hey, I am edified by our talk and I can feel that you're going through something. And she just broke down. She said, yeah, I am going through something. And I said, what can I do for you? She just gave me a big hug and said, you've done it. People around us, one of my favorite quotes comes from a spiritual leader I follow that says, the Lord does hear and answer our prayers, but it's usually through another person that he will choose to answer. And it's my belief that you and I are often placed in personal circles of association where if we're listening, if we will open up ourselves, we can be that answer. And the answer is just giving someone the opportunity to share what they're going through.
Yeah.
And we're both edified together.
Wow.
And so
That's so
I,
powerful. That's so
I feel for
powerful.
me, I've never known more than I know today, and I've never been more committed to business mastery. I am reading obsessively right now in a way that it's been years since I've tackled things this way. I'm really excited about work. And I think everything in my life is made better because when I hit this wall, I talked to those most important to me. I shared with them what I was going through and asked them to help me, and they have. And it's been an incredible strength. And you can do both. You can be doing great things and be at the razor's edge of
Mhm.
holding it together. It's amazing how often those come together.
Yeah.
And I would say to anyone who's there, look, that which is most personal is most universal. That's Carl Rogers said that.
Mm.
And that if you're experiencing a thing like that, you're not alone. I've talked to many of the businesses best. Many of us have been here. I certainly have. And let it be the understanding that you're onto something important,
Yeah.
and we don't need to do this
Oh,
alone.
oh, Abe, gosh, this is like so good. This is like gold nuggets, and the right people will hear this, but it's like, in my whole personal journey, everybody knows like stepped out of a role and then stepped out of a marriage, and I'm just really living fully authentically. And the more I am in the field telling my stories, let me just tell you what kind of doors that opens up to people. It's like you're giving people permission to unload the weight that they're carrying. And sometimes it's just that, like she said, you're already doing it, you already did it, just by acknowledging like, hey, I'm feeling this, like, see me, and creating a safe space. And I think as a coach, like you have invested, and both of us have invested in people, right? We're
Yeah.
people builders, we bring out the best in people. And when we realize that actually, we have dark things we got to get through too. And when we work through that and we're transparent, we share that. Actually, I think that people lean in even more, and it takes that whole relationship to a whole nother level, because sometimes you come across, you, me, anybody who's out in the public eye like we are, perfect life. We just perfect. We
Yeah.
got it all together, and we're unrelatable. We're unrelatable. So when you share that, like nobody, like the guy listening to this right now is like, oh my gosh, he gets me. He gets me. So what is your, because what you said, you checking in with your people, because, and again, I'm seeing that a lot in the men world. I'm around a lot of
Yeah.
men,
Well, we
and
lead the rate of suicide.
you do.
That was a total shock to me.
Yeah.
I would have thought that would have been teenagers,
Yep.
using Snapchat.
Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly.
so I would I can just tell you what I've been doing, and this is what I'd recommend to people. I would find those that you can share with. And I would just tell them, hey, I've got something that I need to share with someone, and it's hard for me. Would you be a person that could listen and just
Mhm.
kind of hear me out and let me say this out loud and care? Would you be
Yeah.
that person? I think most of us want to be a part of someone's solution. And people are, can I share another recent experience
Yeah,
here?
please.
How much time do we got here? I don't want to.
We're good. We're good. We're doing good.
Okay,
We have like
so
15 more minutes.
you mentioned the Millionaire Business Network. You know, uh, Gary and I came up with this idea for this business networking product where people could get together once a month and they would go into these workshop, immersive, experiential learning lessons together. And it's creating these really tight groups because they're learning business finance together. And for us, we work with Keller Williams agents to launch these chapters and to build a part of their business. And so I like to go visit the chapters, and we have a chapter in Gainesville with the great Craig Wilburn. If you know Craig, he's just amazing.
Nice.
And we've got 2 chapters out there. And I went out to meet with his chapter, and we were doing a chapter meeting the next day, but his group got together the night before with everyone that kind of started a couple years ago, and they wanted me to speak to him. So in that group is a guy that owns a large residential home construction business. There's a guy that owns multiple Chick-fil-A franchises. You've got anyone in the services industry. So you've got a home inspector that's really expanded his business. These things that we learn in Keller Williams about business, we think they're universally spoken about. They're not.
They're not.
So when we put these in a format where an agent can be the source of this kind of information for others, they own, the referrals for life from those people. And so the idea is we want you to, we call it lead generation through contribution, and we want you to change the lives of people that have a database to share with you.
I love that.
So I'm standing there in front of this group. I did this a year earlier with the same group. They've always heard me talk about business. I always talk about my wife and my kids and lessons learned. But I shared this, what I shared with you, and I was nervous about it. And it was completely shocking to me that there were 3 in the group that said, I'm there. I've been right there. I feel that. Others that have said, I've been through that. Others that have said, I've got a brother that's there. So I think there is a benefit to becoming a person that others can understand that you can be in the pursuit of the highest level of performance and still have these struggles, and you can do both of those things at the same time. When Gary reached out, I will walk to the edge of Mother Earth for that guy. I wish people could know him the way you and I do.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing.
He loses sleep over us, over
Yeah, I
his
know.
agents.
Yeah.
And what I had was a mentor that just really cared about me. And I've seen him do that for lots of people. I'm not unique in that. But we can do that for others.
Yeah.
And I find that I'm just sharper in business. I'm better when I converse with others, when I'm helping people. So I have a mission. I have a mission to help as many people build their business and build segments of their database the way I'm talking about, and to help them understand that their best life is ahead, and that if they're struggling, there's things they can do. I don't pretend to be a therapist. I'm not. Sometimes in coaching, I get on my high horse right now, my soapbox. Sometimes in the world of coaching, we become so into the skills that we've developed, and they are real skills that we apply them in areas that we shouldn't. And I always tell our coaches at Business Maps, if you're not a marriage counselor. If somebody is bringing that up, you can hear and listen. We don't want to be dismissive, but the real coaching is, how do we add the right person who has that expertise to this team?
Yeah.
We get the right person here to help.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
I think that it does a lot for others when they learn that, man, people go through this. And there are things that we can do. And
I find it just so fascinating though, because honestly, from the outside looking in, you do seem like that person. And the fact that you're adding this now to who you're showing up as in the world, to all the people you influence, the people that coach other people, our relationship, the impact of you sharing is much bigger than I think you realize, because there's so much of this, just the depression. And I think a lot of it is honestly COVID. COVID really kind of could be a piece of it, of just like, in fact, like people almost forget they're isolated, or, and you saw it a lot with the youth, right? And not to make it just about that, but connection, I think, and community, you mentioned earlier, is so important for everybody.
Yeah. Well, and, I'm speaking in glittering generalities when I say this. Men, mostly by our nature, we don't talk about these things. My wife, if I go on a climbing trip with friends and we go climb and ski outside and do the stuff, right?
Yeah.
When I get home, she'll ask me, "Hey, what'd you guys talk about?" I don't even know how to answer that question. We didn't talk. We climbed rocks.
That's right. Like, can you hand me that?
Yeah, we don't typically talk about these things.
Yeah.
But, take someone like Gary, who's the highest performer I've ever had the privilege of working with. He talks about it.
Yeah.
Like he goes in, and so we kind of bring this back full circle to this idea of happiness as a choice. But in this season of life, I've learned that is really true. And that to make that choice, there's some things that we can do that will help us. Some of those things are to talk about it, to seek some help and to seek those that are in a position to help us and to just share unguarded. But there's some other things I think that are important. I talked about earlier about doing the stuff. I've spent 30 years as a pretty dedicated outdoor athlete. But in this season of life, I've struggled getting up and getting to the gym. So here's a life hack that you can steal. I have hired my 12-year-old daughter, Aaliyah. I pay her, the first offer was $5 a day. And in the middle of the first morning, she renegotiated her contract to double, $10 a day.
You taught her well.
5:30 in the morning. Come on, Dad, rise and shine.
Wow.
Then she goes out and makes my pre-workout, which has way more caffeine than I should ever have. And she gives me that. And she says, stay off of YouTube, because that's my drug of choice. Dad, you're not on YouTube. And then she makes my drink and she'll have you chose your workout. And her job is to get me up, get me juiced up, and get me down into the gym.
Wow.
And I was looking for accountability partners to work out with. What I've discovered is that's not what I want. I actually want to go in the gym by myself and listen to good stuff. I just finished the Elon Musk biography. Holy freaking smokes, it's so good. Whether or not you agree with this politics, listening to the most ingenious business developers in the world, there's always something to get. And right now I'm listening to The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And same thing, it's kind of a biographical lesson about people that built some really big companies. And I feel like we're building a big company and I want to learn those lessons. But she gets me going. She gets me started and she is unrelenting. At night, she'll say, Dad, put your phone away. It's time to go to bed. And it's annoying.
Yeah.
But and if I'm ever like the other morning, I was sitting there and I really did not want to work out because my body hurt and it was leg day. And unlike Lego Batman, I skip leg day on occasion. And she said, Dad, I think you're just stalling and I need to get ready for school and I can't go until you're down in the gym. And I was short with her. I'm like, honey, I'm fine. You can go. And she's like, okay. And I could tell it was a little heavy. So I went back to her later and I said, honey, you're doing it exactly right. And if I seem a little grumpy, it's not you. It's me being a big old wuss.
Yeah.
And she said, I don't want you to be mad at me. And I said, oh, I'm not, honey.
Yeah.
I said, you're doing everything exactly the way you need to. And if you see that, say, Dad, you're being a bit of a wuss. And she does. She does that. But here again is an example of we have to give the people around us the words to use that we know will work with us and will help us.
Yeah.
So this idea of, I just need to do this, that's not going to get you where you want to go. We got to booby trap that success by surrounding ourselves and arming people and teaching, educating them on how they can help us.
Yeah.
And then working to not disappoint them.
And I can't end the hour without asking you the question I ask all my guests, which you just kind of, I think, leads right into this. But the question I always ask everybody is, what does playing to win look like for you?
Okay. Playing to win for me is playing unguarded. I have times in my life where looking back, I realized I've been playing guarded. I didn't just let go. Maybe it was that I was uncomfortable with the activities. A lot of times it's that I don't have perfect clarity. By the way, you never have perfect clarity, right?
Right.
But to me, playing to win is committing to a season to play unguarded and then booby trapping my world so that I can do that. And part of booby trapping my world is telling those around me that are close to me that have vested interest in my success, these are the ways I'm going to try and get out of this. Will you watch for those things? When you see me doing this, will you call me on that? Will you tell me to get off my phone? Will you tell me to get into a space? My 18-year-old son introduced me to an app on my iPhone called Opal. And I have two apps on my phone. So I can go to Facebook, which I've learned makes me old. My kids, only old people go to Facebook.
I understand this problem.
Yep. So
it's a real conundrum.
Opal locks you out, gives you like 10 minutes a day, and then lock you out, whatever apps you have.
Oh my gosh.
Spend it. But I have two things. I have Opal, which will gray out my social media apps, And then I have 1 sec. It's called like 1 second. And I have to trace a thing on the screen before it opens. And what it does is it interrupts the dopamine. So I have these 2 apps on my phone. I can never just go check Facebook. It's a whole dance,
Yeah.
but I love it because I don't get into the doom cycle near as much.
Yeah.
And so I think there's incredible power in deciding I want to be better and then enrolling those around us and being able to say, this is where I'm going to struggle and here's how I'm going to try and cheat. Will you watch for that? Will you call me out on that? Will you not allow me to cheat myself with that excuse? And look, if you pick the right people, look alive because they're going to hold you to it. And that's what we want.
That's playing to win, right? That's playing to win.
Playing
And,
to
and
win.
and giving people permission, it's the accountability, the transparency, the clarity, and then setting yourself up with either systems or people like your daughter. I love that, right? And just setting that up so that you win. And knowing, what your triggers are and things like that. But that's playing all in, right? It's playing to win.
When I was on the mountain that night, I call it the night on the mountain.
Mm.
And I've spent so many nights on the mountain, but this is the night on the mountain. The friend I reached out to, I didn't just arbitrarily pick a friend. He's one of the most successful business creators I've ever known in all my life. And I just didn't know where else to go. And I had seemed to recall that he had been through something. And I just said, hey, I'm on the mountain struggling and I don't know what to do. And he was leaving for Europe the next day. It's 1 a.m. And he called me. He said, can I call you? And he called me, talked to me for 2 hours. And the first thing he said to me is, Abe, I'm going to tell you about how I tried to take myself out of this game 14 months ago. I had no idea. And he told me about that. And he said, I have found on the other side, there is love, and there is peace. And he said, I want to challenge you to tell your family, all of them, tell your 12-year-old. He's the reason. The next morning, I sat them all down and said, I got to tell you this. But I'm
Wow.
so grateful. And there was a time, maybe 3 weeks later, that I was just going on a hike. I do that all the time. I don't shut my brain down very easily, so I do that physically. And I was going to go on a
Yeah.
trail run, and I was walking out, and Aaliyah just burst through the door. Dad, Dad! And she ran up. She said, are you going on the mountain? She has seen me go to the mountain my entire life, but now this meant something different.
Mm.
I said, honey, you're worried about your dad? And she said, yeah. I said, oh, honey, I am good. And I love you so much for asking me that. And I'm in a great place, and I just want to go on a hike. Do you want to come with me? She's like, no, I'm not going to go right now. I got homework, or whatever it was. But when we arm those around us with how to check on us, and then we ask them, to do it, and then we seek some strength and what we're learning, we all have communities that we can plug more into, which
Yeah,
means
we
let's
do.
drop our guard, let's play unguarded, let's plug in. And now I've got a business same as anyone else. I'm looking for people that want to launch chapters in the Millionaire Business Network, and they get the best of everything I've got because we have important work. Our mission is we create sacred partnerships that require the best in us to bring out the best in them.
Amazing.
And so I've got a pretty purpose-driven life today. And I would have told you prior to this I was purpose-driven, but it's different now.
Yeah.
It's different on this side of that thing that I've been experiencing.
That's incredible. I did not know we were going to go this way today. And I'm so glad we did. And I just want to thank you for being, unguarded today. You showed up, you didn't
You.
show up with the game face on and all the amazing things we could have talked about that you've done and the top agents that you've, changed their lives and all that. You came with your unguarded self today. So I want to thank you for that. That's a gift to everybody listening. So thank you for that.
Thank you. It's how we do this together.
It is how we do this together. And so with that though, do you have we're going to wrap up the call. Is there any last thought you would like to say to our listeners on anything at all? Anywhere you want to go with that on just wrapping up this powerful conversation?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So you see this little book. If someone's listening to this and they can't see this, I have this little, maybe like 3.5 by 5 inch leather bound book And I've used Gorilla Tape to make a pen holder so that the pen, I can just put a pen on the outside. This, by the way, is from the Kennedy Space Center. It's a space pen. You don't need a space pen, but my family bought me
That's
one, so
awesome.
I now have a space pen. I just carry this in my pocket. It has to be small enough it can fit in my pocket. And I just write my thoughts. I'm not journaling. I just write ideas and I write my thoughts and I write things. And right now, some of the things that are having the biggest impact on our business are those things. And so I am really guarded. And let me turn this around and give this as, now I'm saying I'm guarded. I got to change that language. I'm really protective of what I let in.
Mhm. Yeah.
And if you're a person that is caught up in this election cycle, look, yeah, sure, there's a lot that's going on, but listen to me when I say this. The algorithms are not created to promote our happiness. They are created for conflict. We are being algorithmically programmed for conflict. And if we don't proactively seek great messaging, then we will by default be giving messages designed to conflict with one another. And we were not created for that. We were created to connect. I don't care how much you disagree with a person on any one policy. I promise you, 80% of what's important to us, we agree on. But we don't talk about that. We go to the conflict. So right now, I'm really careful with what I listen to. I share everything that I'm learning. I want to be really contagious in my enthusiasm around that. I make a ton of notes. And I'm constantly looking for a person that I can put my hand out and say, I'm Abe. Because those have led to some really fulfilling conversations. So I would say, man, this is a season where people they're looking for someone to step outside themselves and start a dialogue. And we just mutually benefit.
Yeah.
How's that?
And how I love that. And what if we could all take a little piece of that into our life and be that person for somebody just once a day, to some random stranger, right? Just taking that moment to create that opportunity for somebody. It's a beautiful thing. Abe, you're amazing. I love you more than I didn't think I could, because I always think you're amazing and all the impact that you make. But today I think our conversation really made an impact to exactly who needed to hear it today. And I just, again, thank you so much. And
Thank
I
you.
adore and I can't wait to hear all the things that you do in this coming year and the coming years. And it's just an honor to be on this journey with you.
Thank you so much. Truly grateful. Very honored.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you to our listeners. And I'm going to sign us off and we'll see you on the next episode.